না না এখন না, আমি আমি স্টার্ট করুন।
স্টার্ট করব? আচ্ছা। Good afternoon. On behalf of the director and my colleagues of the Institute of Historical Studies, I warmly welcome the Honorable Chairman, the Speaker, distinguished guests, students, academicians, and ladies and gentlemen, to the second webinar of the Institute of Historical Studies. This time, we will traverse through the field of art. I welcome you to Sri Bhunath Mukherjee Memorial Lecture. This lecture is held annually in the hall of the Institute. But as you know, friends, that due to the global pandemic of COVID-19, we are holding it through Google Meet. The lecture will be delivered by Dr. Shamir Isha. He will speak on Ramkinker, the man and the artist. We are very honored to have among us Sri Manasij Majumder as the chairman of this session. Friends, before I move on, you know that pandemic is true. With that, death is also true. We lost two scholars and members of the Institute of Historical Studies recently. We lost a promising and young scholar, former Dean of Arts Faculty of Jadavpur University, Dr. Subhasish Biswas, on the 15th of September. We also lost on the 16th of September, Sri Subodh Mukhopadhyay, another eminent academician who taught in the Presidency College and later in the Hooghly Mahasan College. On behalf of the Institute of Historical Studies, we pay our deep sorrow and condolence at the passing away of eminent academician Dr. Subhasish Biswas and express our deep condolence to his students, colleagues, and well-wishers, and also to one of his close colleague, Dr. Mohua Sarkar. On behalf of the Institute of Historical Studies, we also pay our deep condolence at the passing away of Sri Subodh Mukhopadhyay and express our sorrow to his family and also to his students, colleagues, and well-wishers of late Professor Subodh Mukhopadhyay. Now I request all to observe a 2-minute silence in memory of the departed souls. Thank you all. Now, as I told you that this is artist Bhunath Mukherjee Memorial Lecture. Now we have got among us his son, Sri Aloy Mukherjee. Sri Aloy Mukherjee to please give a brief sketch about his father. Sir, join করে ফেলুন। Hello, sir, join করে ফেলুন। Friends, as you know that Sri Aloy Mukherjee is a very old man and he's not very tech savvy. So I request you to wait for a little while, a few minutes. He is joining us shortly. Until he joins, please bear with us and wait. He will join and tell about his father. I request all of you to please wait for a few minutes.
কেউ নিজের স্ক্রিন প্রেজেন্ট করবেন না দয়া করে। আপনি যতবার নিজের স্ক্রিন প্রেজেন্ট করবেন আমাকে টাইম টু টাইম আমাকে স্ক্রিন প্রেজেন্ট করতে হবে, তাই জন্য দয়া করে কেউ নিজের স্ক্রিন প্রেজেন্ট করবেন না।
আপনাকে আপনাকে So friends, sir, for some reasons, Sri Aloy Mukherjee, a very senior person, is not able to join right now. So shall we move on? Sir, please unmute your microphone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, can you hear me? Base office?
হ্যাঁ, আপনি এটা আপনাদের প্রজেক্ট, তো আপনি যা ডিসাইড করবেন তাই করতে পারেন।
না, বেস অফিস একটু আমাদের ডিরেক্টরকে একটু বলুন যে আনমিউট করতে। আমি ওনার কাছে প্রশ্ন জিজ্ঞেস করি, উনি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না। শুনতে পাচ্ছেন, উনি বলতে পারেন, উনি কিছু হ্যাঁ স্যার, স্যার আনমিউট করুন। Sir, please unmute your microphone. So for some reasons, our director is not being able to unmute his microphone. Sir, sir, unmute করুন। Is it possible? ওরা কি unmute করা সম্ভব? Base? Is it possible to unmute him? Base?
না 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 না, ইট ইজ নট পসিবল ফর বেস অর ফর দ্য ম্যাটার ডক্টর মইদুল রহমান যে কনসোলটাই আছেন ওটার থেকেও হবে না, গুগল মিটে নিজেকেই আনমিউট করতে হয়।
Okay. So with the permission of the sir, I think that time is running out. The speaker and the chairman are waiting for their turn. So I think that Aloy Mukherjee Sri Aloy Mukherjee, son of late artist Bhunath Mukherjee, has not joined us right now. So with the permission of the sir, I think that we shall move on. And now I request our honorable director, Professor Chittabrata Palit, to please introduce the speaker and the chairman, and also to outline the theme of this lecture. Over to you, sir. Sorry, friends. Sorry for the little interruption. I think Aloy Mukherjee will be joining us shortly, and after he joins, we will hear about his father. Now, I hand over the microphone or request our honorable director, Professor Chittabrata Palit, to please introduce the speaker and the chairman, and also to say about the theme of this lecture.
পালিত স্যার, আপনি নিজের অডিও আর ভিডিও দুটোই অন করুন। দেখুন কল বাটনের পাশে ভিডিও সাইন আছে, ওটাকে অন করুন এবং কল বাটনের পাশেই বাঁদিকে একটা মাইক্রোফোনের বাটন আছে, ওটাকে অন করুন। So even Palit sir is not here. Mr. Abarno Chatterjee, Mr. Palit sir is not here.
Yes, West Bengal. West Bengal. Yes.
হ্যাঁ বলুন।
So friends, today there are a lot of interruptions in holding this meeting. Our honorable director is also not being able to unmute his microphone or the camera. So without sorry for that in this interruption, and without much ado and with the permission of the director, I now request Sri Manasij Majumder, eminent art critic, to please chair this session and take over the proceedings. Sri Manasij Majumder.
স্যার মজুমদার স্যার, আপনার অডিও অফ আছে।
Yes, now you can hear?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay. I am very much honored. I feel very much honored to be here in the chair to preside over a very stimulating talk, must be a very stimulating talk by Mr. Shamir Isha, a very profound art scholar and young historian. And I hope that this will give us he will give us a fresh evaluation of one of our foremost architect of modernism in Indian art. I just request Mr. Isha to present his paper.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, yes.
It is a great privilege that I have been asked to deliver the Bhunath Memorial lecture, which I had delivered 2 years back, and I have spoken on Jamini Roy. And today it's equally significant because this lecture would be chaired by the great art historian Manasij Majumder, who himself is an epitome of the modern art movement. He has witnessed it through his long years of life, and he has written on it. He must have seen also Ramkinker, or he must have personally experienced him. So I'm immensely grateful also to Dr. Chittabrata Palit, who needs no recognition. And I'm sorry for the very dramatic poster which was made by the Institute of Historical Studies, which shows Mr. Manasij Majumder perhaps like Homer and me like Hector of Troy. And many people might have been offended by the color and the drama of it, with no picture of the director of the institute. But Dr. Palit needs no recognition, and his personality is. I will start my lecture on Ramkinker, the man and the artist. And I will start with a Bengali verse which I had written. There had been many books which had been published on Ramkinker recently, which I thought I knew about, but I see that a lot of research had already been done. So what to talk about? His artworks, which have been much discussed, or his personal life, or his persona as a human being. So let me start. 1980 সালে রামকিঙ্করের মৃত্যুর পর বিড়লা একাডেমিতে একটি শোক সভার আয়োজন করা হয়। সেই সভায় ডক্টর নিহার রঞ্জন রায় মহাশয় রামকিঙ্কর আহ, আহ, সম্বন্ধে প্রথমে যে কথাটি I my short lecture on Ramkinkar, which is very easy to apprehend as well as very difficult also. Among Nandalal's students and later colleagues, Binod Bihari and Ramkinkar stood out in many respects. He described them as complete artists, and they were versatile like him. Both Nandalal and Ramkinkar, in a major shift from the nationalist artist, turned away from the classical Indian art to pre and post-classical phases of Indian art. Until about 1940s, Ramkinkar's development was intimately tied to his interactions with Nandalal and Binod Bihari, but he had a temperament very different from either of these seniors, his seniors. And therefore, unlike Binod Bihari, he drew inspiration not only from pre-classical but also from post-classical Indian art. Further, although he drew lessons from non-realistic Eastern traditions, he was more open to Western modern art than Binod Bihari and Nandalal. There was at least two reasons for this. First, armed with a prodigious natural talent like Nandalal, but not restricted by nationalist ideological commitment, unlike Nandalal, he was open to cross-cultural influences from the West. And secondly, the nationalist art movement did not develop an indigenous approach to sculpture, but merely adopted artists trained in Western method into their fold. During the first 10 years, there was no sculpture classes in Kolabhavan either. Ramkinkar received his training in sculpture from the two visiting European sculptors Lisa Wanport and Marguerite Millward, who visited Shantiniketan in 1928 and conducted a few demonstration classes. Millward was trained under the post-Rodesque French sculptor Anthony Baudet, who worked in a vigorous quasi-expressionist style. As a sculptor, Ramkinkar drew upon this modernist tradition and combined it with the exposure to Indian sculpture he had received under Nandalal. This marked him out from other Indian sculptors of his time, who were trained in the Western academic manner. This is evident in the 1938-39 monumental sculpture of the Santhal family made in laterite cement mortar. Beside being the first monumental sculpture, his valorization of local tribal peasants also reflect a new social perspective in Indian art. At a time when Indian writers were beginning to use art as an instrument for social change under the aegis of the progressive movement in literature, he was the most significant Indian artist who developed a parallel position. This and the Second World War significantly impacted his post-1940s work, in which the robustness of post-classical Indian sculpture and expressive possibilities of post-Cubist fragmentation interwove. For Ramkinkar, modern Western art was one of the several sources he drew upon. So this is what we start with while speaking with Ramkinkar. For a better realization of this feeling, one should have a good look at the two large Santhal groups and a headless thresher in the early morning light sweeping through the filigree of young leaves. The Santhal groups suddenly seemed to strike up in sheer jollity, especially the young Triton blowing his horn, the headless thresher, soared like a cylindrical monument offering a hymn to labor. There was something about them which was reminiscent of the Shurashundaris of Konark. Had placed Ramkinkor's head at the entrance and another very of a woman in one of the exhibition rooms of the National Gallery of Modern Art. The woman's head was somehow strangely reminiscent of Rodin's Balzac, the Virgin, that stands at the monument in Paris. It was in this very National Gallery of Modern Art where one could first see Ramkinkor's oils and watercolors. There is also a magnificent canvas of a bullock cart struggling in the mud in Shanko Chaudhury's house in Nizamuddin West. Dilip Chaudhury, the renowned graphic artist, once a pupil of this man, had a house at House Khas in Delhi where Ramkinkar had put up after returning from Himachal Pradesh and Jammu, where he had gone looking for the right stone in the Shivalik hills with which to sculpt the Kuvera and his consort to serve as Dwarapalas at the gate of the new Reserve Bank of India building on Parliament Street, New Delhi. Those were the days of Jawaharlal Nehru, his daughter Indira, Chintaman Deshmukh, Zakir Hussain, and others who were all anxious to honor themselves by honoring true and great artists. But the massive Kuvera and Yakshi, when put up, somehow missed the right height and elevation and suffered in the process. It was amazing in this context how Ramkinkar took his losses and disappointments. He had lost money on the contract, for he had not cared to figure out how much his trip in search of the stone could cost, or how long the carving and installation would take, during which he would have to pay his technicians and assistants. Indeed, for money he never cared a damn. He never had any use for it or thought of saving any, except for what would keep him alive for the day and happy in the evening with the cheapest of spirits locally distilled. Ramkinkar, unlike another artist, did not look miserable and did not sit waiting for months over the loss on the deal. Tomorrow was always another day for a new kind of sculpture and drawing. He was never made for looking back or resting on his oars. In the meantime, Mr. Dilip Chaudhury had worked out the accounts and arrived at the local figure of loss. But all that Ramkinkar seemed to be interested was playing about with mud and plaster in Dilip's house, working on a small double helix of a sculpture resembling branches intertwining and reaching out upwards. One would indeed be impressed at the devotion with which Mr. Dilip and Joya Appaswamy worshipped him without his desiring any of their attention. Everyone was thus convinced about what a great teacher he was and would always remain in the memory of his students in the history of art. Of course, those who visited him during the 1970s in his thatched mud hut found him fast asleep in the afternoons, totally and completely indifferent to his surroundings. The unkempt room and its squalor reflected the fact that Ramkinkar was not made to abide by the standards of the mortals. He actually strode a world where externals did not matter. Ramkinkar would always bear the look of being pleased with the guest, giving them moody and good to eat, and would then show them his small half-finished pieces he would be working upon in his courtyard. Thereafter he would take his chosen guest around the campus to show his large sculptures. He would often mention how Rabindranath Tagore himself had defended and saved the sculptor from the ire of his colleagues. "What is there for me to explain?" he said, when once someone asked him about his sculptures. "They are there. You dared to take a leave to attend the local discussion. Ramkinkar was more like Jamini Roy in this respect. He was not an as articulate in speech or writing as in the media that was legitimately his own, that is painting, in the hands of even the closest friends and staunch admirers. Art sculptures to go with nature, out in the open, in the world, or in the grove, but not the formal garden. Most sculptors have produced works either for the city square or the front of houses or formal gardens or for occupying spaces in large rooms and halls. It was Rodin in the modern age, followed by Henry Moore, who produced sculpture meant to be placed in the informal natural surroundings. For the purpose of achieving perfect accord with nature, Henry Moore invented his wholes and whirls and accentuated the undulations of the human body, reverting to the old Platonic dictum that all forms are ultimately amenable to reductions to the cube, the cone, the cylinder, or the polyhedron. This is exactly what Ramkinkar did with his own unique resources. He must have spent years contemplating the role of stone in Indian sculpture, followed by the age of brick and terracotta. Again, he must have studied the pitted effects on the sculptures of our temples, the effects of weathering and aging, what one may call the patina of stone, as distinguished from that of bronze. Stone was beyond his reach, and so by a sheer stroke of genius he took hold of the crushed laterite and gravel and cement and mud and produced textures that were marvelously attuned to the surface of trunks and branches of trees. The next stroke of genius was the marvelous intertwining of forms, sinuous or helical, leaving holes and providing interstitices or vestiges of establishing unmistakably preeminence of the helix and the platonic solids and crystals. These two were created to go with nature in a park. His third stroke of genius was to rid his own sculpture of superfluous and elaborate surface and reduce them to abstract forms and constructions with the greatest economy. So much so, for this was more so even evident for open air sculpture. Let's think of a sculpture for the city square or the indoor gallery. Let's take, for example, his Gandhi and the curious abstraction of Tagore's head. Ramkinkar's Gandhi had feet like two shafts issuing straight out of the solid earth, an incomparable symbolic representation of the essential Gandhi, possible only to a great sculptor. His abstract head of Tagore, which raised a howl of horror and indignation among his distinguished gurus and admirers, but which Tagore defended from condemnation, is something which Gaudier, Bresca, or Brasui could certainly have proud of. These are products of no untutored primitive, but of a profoundly educated, mind, keenly aware of what has already been achieved in history and mindful of where one must go from here. Ramkinkar had thus established his in display in the world liberally intellectually natural, organic origin and inevitability, and yet is the product of complex reflection and reason. He was one of the great and rare colorists also, a distribution that distinction that Rabindranath Tagore himself must have recognized. This quality comes out in two watercolors, the one depicting the lush green foliage and cool, gentle intimacy of a Bengal village in the Ballabpur piece, and the gaunt, rank laterite landscape with solitary date palm in the middle ground shooting out of the eviscerate soil stretching upwards and joining up with the sky like a straight pillar in the Kowai piece. This was, of course, called about or acknowledged in the Telegraph on the 18th of February 1980. Restricted by the study of his output new material that were at hand. Further, his work belonging together that was individualistic and rooted in his own personality. His works had tremendous energy and a love of movement. His figures and forms are dynamic and earthly. It is typical of Ramkinkar that many of the works are out of doors. They belong to the wind and the soil and are part of the rugged beauty of nature. The work of some of the artists is informed by a sense of struggle. Even upon their own dynamic, the questioning and striving of the artist. Ramkinkar responded to his work, for when, through and effort, his sculpture at last comes into being, it is a birth of a new complacent ideal, but of a volatile entity with the accidental marks and vitality of life itself. Ramkinkar was born in a village near Bankura in 1910. He was educated at Bankura but moved to Shantiniketan in 1925. The atmosphere at Shantiniketan from conventions, its closeness to nature, its Catholicity were ideal for Ramkinkar's growth. For a student, he later became From a student, he later became a member of the teaching staff at Ramkinkar's works have a dual nature. Firstly, a structural core which is interior and organic and shows itself in the organization of forms, and secondly, an expressionistic quality which is baroque, buoyant, empowering. The qualities of his sculpture and painting are always of interest. Ramkinkar worked with considerable power, both the sculpture, his constructions in cement, stone, and plaster, achieved great with very limited technical means. In painting, he worked in oils, gouache, and watercolors. Even the smallest drawings and etchings show an original vision and monumentality. Ramkinkar's outdoor sculptures are created on the location and so grow out of their context. Each work seems to possess a latent energy and puts out some gesture, human, organic, and symbolic. The style ranges from naturalistic, romantic figures to complete abstract forms. The robust Santals living around Shantiniketan were perhaps his models. Among his major works can be cited the Santhal family, a roughly textured group, its strong movement contrasting with the static landscape around it. This sculpture by the road carries with it the movement of the road. The figure possesses the animation of primitive people. An early example of abstract composition in a cement designed for a lamp done in 1941 and set in the garden of the guest house at Shantiniketan. The rhythm of the composition seemed uh, seemed to uh, Kinker seemed to establish Kinker himself as an undoubted modern sculptor. His landscapes, watercolors, studies from rural life, and drawings of animals are also of considerable interest. Ramkinkar was also a remarkable portraitist. One of his studies among the necessary of modern art is rough, textured, and massive and bursting with the
Samir sir, if I may interrupt you,
oil
uh,
color.
can you please switch off your
Yes,
video feed? Can you, Samir sir, can you please switch off your video feed? Because maybe
I'm
internet is
switching off
slow
my
on your
video. Yeah.
side. Yeah, and your voice is not coming to
Okay.
us properly.
Though Ramkinkar started my video. Okay. Is it all right? Yes, it is all
Yes,
right.
sir. Yes, sir.
Though Ramkinkar Though Ramkinkar started painting in tempera and wash, he soon adopted other media more suited to his temperament. Oil and watercolor gave him greater freedom, and in these his style is both spontaneous and monumental. In his oils he had painted both figurative and abstract themes. The figurative again including very perceptive portraits which combine an insight into the character of the sitter with a certain degree of stylization. Though Ramkinkar belonged to Shantiniketan school, he, like Binod Bihari Mukherjee, showed the new direction this school put out in the 1930s and 40s. He was one of the first artists to create abstract compositions in both sculpture and painting in a way that was more consciously determined than the intuitively conceived works of Gaganendranath or Robindranath. He was a modern romantic who adequately expressed the changing spirit of the time. Kinkor had stated that a work of art fulfills its own demand. It has no meaning other than its physical presence. It possesses, above all, a vitality of its own. Ramkinkar, like some of the other artists of the day, was conspicuously experimental and eclectic. His interests went beyond his chosen media. He often produced plays and greatly enjoyed poetry and music. His nonconformist casual way of life tended to isolate him to a certain degree from the painters of his time, for he was outgoing and even unpredictable. His work as a whole links the Shantiniketan school to the more unconfined art of the later times. As stated before, there is a lot of misconception and cheap talk about his birth as being a Bais or a Santal or a mud cutter. But Bej was born in an economically modest family in Bankura district of modern state of West Bengal in India. In that sense, he was a Bengali, not an Adivasi, as many people usually think. The surname Bej derives from Boiddo and Boijo consequently. His family surname was Puramanik and was abandoned by him in the early 1925. However, many of his artistic creations have been inspired by the lifestyles of rural Dalit or Adivasi Santhal communities living in and around his place of work, that is Shantiniketan. While in his mid-teens, Ramkinkar used to paint portraits of Indian freedom fighters involved in the non-cooperation movement against the British rulers of India. At the age of 16, he got noticed by the renowned journalist Ramananda Chatterjee. 4 years later, Ramkinkar joined the Bishwabharati University at Shantiniketan as a student of fine arts. After obtaining a diploma from the university, he went on to head, that is, he became the head of the department, the sculpture department. Ramkinkar's renowned sculptor disciples, that is, people who followed him, include Prabhas Sen, Shankho Chaudhuri, Avatar Singh Panwar, Madan Bhatnagar, Dharmani, and Balbir Singh Kat. Rajul Dharyal and Susan Ghosh, apart from the famous Jankar Narjari, who is still there at Kala Bhavan, writing profusely on him. Ramkinker Rage was born actually in 1906, a very significant date. With whom he was associated. This led him in 1925, on the advice of Ramananda Chatterjee, the nationalist publisher and apologist for the new Indian art movement, to mark his way to Kala Bhavan, the art school at Shantiniketan. At Shantiniketan, under the guidance of Nandalal Bose and encouraged by his liberating intellectual environment shaped by Rabindranath Tagore, his artistic skills and intellectual horizons acquired a new depth and complexity. Soon after completing his studies at Kala Bhavan, he became a member of the faculty as stated earlier, and along with Nandalal and Binod Bihari Mukherjee, played a decisive role in making Shantiniketan the most important center for modern art in pre-independent India. Shantiniketan was conceived as a locus for artistic experimentation and resurgence rather than a mere center for imparting training and knowledge. This allowed talented individuals to add social dimension and give public expression to their personal vision. Beginning in the early 30s, he began to fill the campus with his sculptures, one after the other, which were innovative in subject matter and personal in style. In the first magnum, his first magnum opus in this genre was, as stated earlier, the Santhal family, done in 1938. In this larger than life sculpture, he represented the tribal peasants of the region, giving the figures iconic presence and dignified grace that was so far limited to the images of gods and rulers. This is what I am trying to say. In a country where all public artworks was undertaken only at the behest of the government commissioning and executed in consonance with the taste of conservative ruling elites, this was a radical departure. The use of cement and laterite mortar to model the figures and the use of a personal style in which modern Western and Indian pre-classical sculptural values were brought together was equally radical. With the seminal works, Ramkinkar uh, was also recognized and established himself as an undoubted modern Indian sculptor. Ramkinkar was singularly reticent and otherworldly, as he was single-minded in his commitment to art and humanity as well. But this did not stop his work from being noticed and appreciated by sensitive artists and connoisseurs, even if it were to remain a small group. Although his work was passed over for quite a while, gradually it began to get both national and international attention. He was invited to participate in the Salon de Realités Nouvelles in 1950, in the Salon de Mai in 1951, and in the 70s, national honors began to come his way one after the other. In 1970, the government of India honored him with the Padma Bhushan, Padma Awards as it is called today, under the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. In 1976, he was made a fellow of the Lalit Kala Academy, and in 1976 he was again conferred the Deshikottamo by Vishwabharati, and in 1979 and he was honored with D.Lit by Robindra Bharati University. There was a lot of controversy about the bronze bust of Rabindranath Tagore made by Beige, which was placed in 1984 at the outdoor monument at Balaton Fjord, Hungary, on a promenade named for Tagore alongside Lake Balaton. Tagore had received cardiac treatment at the State Hospital of Cardiology in 1926 there. The National Gallery of Modern Art, NGMA, in New Delhi has the original concrete casting of the bust from which the bronze bust was prepared and dates the original in 1940, 1 year before Tagore's death. When West Bengal Cultural Minister Jotin Chakraborty unveiled Ramkinker's bust of Tagore in Hungary, he had remarked that it did not look like Tagore and should be probably replaced. When people like Satyajit Ray swiftly responded to the matter, it was laid to rest. A different view holds that many prominent persons, including Moitrey Devi, poet and novelist, supported Chakraborty, and the latter, and with the latter, the efforts to replace the bust was cancelled by the cultural minister Buddhadev Bhattacharya. The once controversial bust has been replicated by the Indian government and given by it to a number of foreign countries, including Colombia, Finland, and Israel. Sometime between 2003 and 2009, the outdoor sculpture at Balaton Fair was replaced with a different appearing bust of Tagore, and the original bust by Bage was moved to the room 220 of the State Hospital of Cardiology, which is the same room where Rabindranath Tagore had stayed in 1926. I would end this lecture, which had taken you for quite some time, with a verse in Bengali, which was penned by a very famous artist in a book which was written on Ramkinkar. বিভিন্ন মাধ্যমে কাজ করার পরও শিল্পীকে আমরা প্রখ্যাত ভাস্কর হিসেবেই জানি। তিনি বীরভূমের লাল মাটিতে শক্ত শিমুল গাছের মতো সোজা দাঁড়িয়ে আছেন, গায়ে কাঁটা আর মাথায় লাল ফুল নিয়ে। প্রতিকৃতি ভাস্কর্যের মধ্যে যারা তার তৈরি মথুরা সিংহ, বিনোদিনী এবং রবীন্দ্রনাথের আবক্ষ মূর্তি দেখেছেন, তারা অবশ্যই জানেন যে তার শিল্পদৃষ্টি এবং দক্ষতা বহিরাবয়বের বহুময়তা ভেদ করে অন্তরের অন্তঃস্থলে প্রবেশ করে। তার কাজের মধ্যে এনে দিয়েছে সম্পূর্ণ আলাদা স্বাদ, একটা প্রাণের উত্তাপ এবং অজানা অন্তরের ইঙ্গিত। সাঁওতাল পরিবার রামকিঙ্করের আরেকটি অসাধারণ শিল্প সৃষ্টি। গড়নের মধ্য দিয়ে তিনি একটা সমগ্রতা, একটা জীবনবোধের সাবলীল প্রকাশ কাজটির মধ্যে এমন একটি ছন্দময় গতি এনে দিয়েছেন যে তাকিয়ে দেখলে আজও আমাদের মনে হয় যেন শিল্পী এদের বড় কাছের লোক। তিনি হেঁটে চলেছেন ওদের সঙ্গেই, তপ্ত রোদ্দুর মাথায় করে, আর আমাদের দিকে তাকিয়ে ইঙ্গিত করে বলে চলেছেন, চলো আর চলে এসো সাহস করে, অত ভয় কিসের? তবু আজ আমরা ওর মতো সাহস করে শিল্প বা ইতিহাসের পথে অতটা বেরিয়ে আসতে পারিনি। থ্যাংক ইউ। Thank you everyone for giving me a patient hearing, and I put on my video. Am I allowed to do so?
Yes, sir.
Have you shown my the paintings and the photographs of Ramkinkar which I collected? Has it been shown?
Yes, sir.
There were quite some. There were 60 almost, 60 to 64 what Moidul told me.
There were
And
24 slides.
oh, sorry, then they have taken out 24 slides. So this is what I could make out of Ramkinkar, but it is very difficult to give a lecture on Ramkinkar because it had taken me 2 months to read and go on reading and jot down certain things and then finalize my own points. But then you always have a intellectual response, like you have organized to the Institute of Historical Studies under the aegis of Dr. Chittabrata Palit, to whom I am very grateful. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Bolun.
Palit sir, you are audible.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay. At this point, I
yeah,
participate. I
please
participate.
keep yeah, please keep the video in a static position.
Oh, static position. Okay. Okay. Shall I start?
Yes, sir. Please start.
Okay. I joined late because of technical difficulties. I first of all, I wanted to introduce the speakers and chairpersons, including Bhunath Mukherjee, which I do now. You know that. Hello, can this to me? Can you listen to me?
Yes, sir. We can listen to you. Please carry on.
Okay, okay. Now, you know that this is a webinar to continue with our endowment lectures. This one, as already announced by our P.R.O, was in the name of artist Bhunath Mukherjee. This was instituted by his son Aloy Mukherjee, who couldn't participate because of these technical difficulties. Anyway, uh, Bhunath Mukherjee, you all know perhaps, was a master portrait painter of Calcutta. I've seen many of his portraits, including one at Asst Mukherjee's house, the portrait of Asst Mukherjee himself. So he's well known, you know. Uh, and Bhunath, we are all thankful to him because he has perpetuated the memory of his father by creating this endowment for the Institute of Historical Studies. Thank you all, wherever you are listening to me. Second is the speaker today, that is my dear Shamir Isha, who I know is a very accomplished scholar in this field. He has got his master's and PhD degrees from Kalabhavan Shantiniketan. He remains an expert in this subject, and he has been an asset to the Institute of Historical Studies. He has given several lectures and written several papers for us up till now. So I thought that he would be the best person to deliver. I have listened to the full lecture and so much enriched by his lecture today. And then, of course, the legend is there. I can see him. That is the chairman today, uh, my friend Manasij Majumder, who is about 5 years senior to me. Doesn't matter. We are friends. Manasij Majumder has already made a name as an expert. Is a small word for him. He's a stalwart of this subject. He has written books on so many artists, and he has been lecturing on these themes uh, all over India and abroad. Several times he has been to foreign countries as well. And you know that he once came before this one to the Institute of Historical Studies to acquaint us with the development of European art. Many people don't know what is modern, what is postmodern, etc., what is classical, and he gave a very lucid explanation of the stage and evolution of this development of Western paintings and sculpture. Now that is him, and I'll not take a too long time. I have introduced these two. I've introduced Aloy, I introduced Bhunath Mukherjee. My role ends there, but you will appreciate that we have just precariously kept the program going at the Institute through these webinars. Mostly they're conversions from the endowment lectures. I just announced that soon after this, there will be the next one, and that will be on Mahatma Gandhi. That will be the next webinar for us, where the keynote speaker is Professor Sumit Mukherjee. We all join. With these words, I'll hand over the mic to the legend, that is Sri Manasij Majumder.
Chairperson Majumder sir, your audio is off.
Now you can listen. You can hear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We
Hello.
can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. May I continue? May I continue?
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Okay. So my point is that Mr. Shamir Isha has really enlightened us with his very learned paper, very thoroughgoing paper on Ramkinker, his personality and his art. But I should add a few words more. I agree with him on every respect, in every respect. But I think I should add a point for clear perceptions of what exactly, precisely, is the achievement of Ramkinkar as one of the four great Shantiniketan masters. Now, there are two scholars, Mrinal Ghosh and Professor R. Shiv Kumar, who have depicted the Shantiniketan artist in different light in their very scholarly writings, which unfortunately I don't agree. First of all, Vinal has given emphasis on the Indianness of their modernism, particularly of, all the artists. Only thing is that he allows a concession that Nandalal, Vinod Bihari, Ramkinkar, and Tagore, step by step, had, well, gave this Indian modernist art an international orientation, and the process was completed in Tagore's art. But what I think, I do not claim that what I think is right or it is absolute. No. What I think is that, yes, I should also say what Shiv Kumar thinks. Shiv Kumar thinks that Shiv Kumar held an exhibition of four great modern masters of Shantiniketan in Delhi on the occasions of the 50th anniversary of our independence. And there, in the introductory notes, he said that they created a contextual modernism. I do not exactly understand what he meant by contextual or modernism, but what I want to point out is this: that both the scholar have grouped these four artists together as if their contributions to Indian modern art is the same, of same nature, of same category. But I think that there is a clear divisions between Nandalal and Vinod Bihari on one side and Ramkinkar and Tagore on the other. Now, if we want to justify these divisions with a clear conceptual category, then I should say that Nandalal and Vinod Bihari had practiced an art of a modern art, and they stuck to it, their Indian identity. They bothered too much of Indian identity of Indian modern art. Now, Indian identity was first, well, came to Indian art in the hands of Abanindranath Tagore. But, the Indian identity, well, made Abanindranath's art and Nandalal's art and Vinod Bihari's art, of course, modern, but not modernist. There's a clear distinction between modernism and modernity. Modernity, well, that had given our art, Indian art, a collective identity. But when it shifted from collective identity to the identity of the artist himself, the unique identity of the artist himself, and this began with Ramkinkar. That is why Ramkinkar is the true modernist artist, the first modernist artist of India. And actually, the same thing happened with Rabindranath Tagore simultaneously. But I will show you, that is something, I missed in the illustrations given by But he mentioned this portrait, but he couldn't show it. Look at this Tagore's portrait done by Ramkinker. Do you think it has got anything to do with Indian art or Indian identity? I don't think so. And you ought to know that Shamir has already mentioned it was not appreciated by anybody except Rabindranath himself. In fact, Rabindranath appreciated all through his personality, his lifestyle, his non-conformist habits, everything, and his art. Now, of course, that doesn't mean when he was trying, Ramkinker was trying to express himself and nobody else, nothing else, himself in art. And this happened in the West first. Think of 1997, Picasso's Guernica. Now, what is important is the form. Whenever the artist is concerned with exclusive self-expression, he attaches importance to form, not to content. Of course, content is there. Content is very powerful. Even then, Guernica also, the content is very powerful. But what immediately attacks our notice is the form. Here also you see, what immediately attacked is the forms of the culture. Really, it is independent of the identity of Tagore. If it has got any identity, it is the identity of Ramkinker himself. So I think Ramkinker stands apart from both Nandalal and Binoy Bihari. And he, despite his close affinity with Tagore, he is still very much unique. These are the few words I want to add to Shamir's talk. I wholeheartedly accept whatever Shamir has pointed out. Whatever he has mentioned about Ramkinker's personality in art, in his life, and his lifestyle, and his art, his robustness, his vigor, ruggedness, all these are true, exact expressions, impressions of Ramkinker's art, of everybody who is really sensitive to Ramkinker's life and art. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I'm enlightened because you have removed many of the misconceptions that I had, and the journey was not clear. In fact, because I have not born in 1974, and you are a much senior person, and this was a great revelation for me that it was Ramkinkar himself was an individualist, and his individualism was unique. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Dr. Manasij Majumder, and thank you, Professor Palit, for giving me this opportunity.
Best lecture.
My thanks to all. Yes, I was looking for, I have always thought about it, but I never written down, except on one occasion, written down all these ideas about it, but I have a plan to write something about involving, focusing on modernism in Indian art, modernism, not modernity. Anyway, thank you so much.
Chairman sir. Chairman sir, can you listen to me?
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Sri Aloy Mukherjee, son of late artist Bhunath Mukherjee, has joined us right now. And may I request you to please invite him to say a few words about his father.
Well,
Sri Aloy Mukherjee.
I welcome the son of great artist Bhunath Mukherjee. Well, I can tell you one thing, that Bhunath Mukherjee has done a portrait of my father, poet Motilal Majumder, and that hangs in the Bunge Sahitya Parishad. And I have got a pencil sketch done by his father, of my father, in my collection, still now. So I am very much well acquainted with Bhunath Mukherjee, who is a great portraitist, and I often miss him. Because no exhibition is organized, mounted in Calcutta anymore of Bhunath Mukherjee. I will request his son to see to it that his paintings are collected and given on display for Calcutta's art audience somewhere, either in Birla Academy or Academy of Fine Arts or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I invite Mr. Mukherjee to say about his father. Hello.
Hello. Yes, I think
Mr. Mukherjee, sir.
he was with
Can,
us all through the lecture, but he has left us. I'm trying to call him, and trying to contact him, and requesting him to please join with us once again. The chairman has already invited Sri Aloy Mukherjee to say a few words about his father. So I'm trying to contact him. Please wait. I request friends to wait for. Yes, sir. What do you suggest that he has left us? So what do you suggest, sir? Chairman, sir.
sir, Majumder, sir, please unmute yourself.
He's here. He's here. He has come. He has joined us once again.
Hello. What I'm expected to do? We have to wait for. Hello.
Yes, Chairman, sir. Aloy Mukherjee has joined us right now.
Well,
so please invite him.
Let him take.
Yes.
Take the mic straight.
Base, please request Sri Aloy Mukherjee to start his presentation. To unmute. Base.
Aloy Mukherjee is from which profile? Artist Bhunath Mukherjee.
Yes, artist Bhunath Mukherjee profile.
Okay. মুখার্জি স্যার আপনি দেখুন কল বাটন যেটা আছে কল বাটনের বাঁ দিকে ভয়েস বাটনটা আছে ওটাকে একবার টিপুন ওটা হয়তো লাল হয়ে আছে ওটাকে সাদা করতে হবে তো ওটা আরেকবার টিপুন অলয় মুখার্জি স্যার আপনি দেখুন আপনার স্ক্রিনে একটা কল বাটন আছে নিচের দিকে তার বাঁ দিকে একটা বাটন আছে ভয়েসের ওটাকে একটু টিপুন ওটাকে অন করতে হবে লাল হয়ে আছে দেখুন বাঁ দিকে স্যার আপনি কি আছেন মুখার্জি স্যার আপনি কি আছেন
Please give your. I think please give your opinion. That Professor Palit will just decide what to do.
I think he is not that technologically advanced to take part in today's lecture. So before I think this lecture is put off, I would like to point out that our base EC member, Dr. Moidul Rahman, he lost his mother yesterday and so hasn't been able to present. And we are doing this to help Moidul Rahman deal with the sorrow and grief that he is facing today. And our some base members have gone to his house and we are conducting in his absence. Thank you for listening.
Yes, so now I request the chairman, Professor Manasij Majumder, to please take some questions. Is there any questions? Sir, please.
If there is any question, please ask the.
মুখার্জি স্যার আনমিউট হয়েছে। সবাইকে আমি বলবো যে নিজেকে মিউট করুন, কারণ মুখার্জি স্যার আনমিউট হয়েছেন। মুখার্জি স্যার, আপনি যদি কাইন্ডলি একটু বলেন তাহলে ভালো হয়। স্যার, আপনি আনমিউট হয়ে গেছেন, আপনি নিজের বক্তব্য পেশ করুন।
হ্যালো, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, একদম শুনতে পাচ্ছি, একদম শুনতে পাচ্ছি, আপনি বলুন।
আচ্ছা, আমি বাংলায় বলতে পারি? হ্যালো,
নিশ্চয়ই নিশ্চয়ই স্যার, ভালো বাংলায় বলতে পারেন।
আচ্ছা, আর্টিস্ট ভুনাথ মুখার্জি ভারতবর্ষের দ্বিতীয় রয়্যাল একাডেমিশিয়ান, যিনি কলকাতা বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে গুরুপুরনব স্কলারশিপের সাহায্যে রয়্যাল একাডেমিতে পোর্ট্রেট পেন্টিং এর উপরে গবেষণা করে সফল হন। ইতিপূর্বে তিনি গভর্নমেন্ট আর্ট কলেজ থেকে 5 বছরের কোর্স 6 বছরের কোর্স 5 বছরে উত্তীর্ণ হন নদিয়া জেলা বোর্ডের স্কলারশিপে। পরবর্তীকালে নন্দলাল বোস, মুকুল দে প্রভৃতি এবং দেবীভাই রায়চৌধুরী এদের উৎসাহে তিনি আর্ট গবেষণা, চিত্রকলা গবেষণার দিকে মনোযোগী হন এবং বিভিন্ন মনীষীদের বসিয়ে বহু চিত্র তিনি অঙ্কন করেন। রবীন্দ্রনাথ, গান্ধীজি, স্যার পি.সি. রায়, সুভাষচন্দ্র বোস, জওহরলাল নেহেরু প্রভৃতি বহু শতাধিক মনীষীর ছবি তিনি অঙ্কন করেন এবং সেগুলো তার স্বাক্ষরযুক্ত, আশীর্বাদযুক্ত। লন্ডন ডিভিশন থেকে তার বক্তৃতা অনুষ্ঠিত হয়েছিল 1954 খ্রিস্টাব্দে এবং ভারতবর্ষের মধ্যে কলকাতা পশ্চিমবঙ্গ বিধানসভা, কলকাতা হাইকোর্ট, মহাজাতি সদন, বীরেন রায় চিত্রশালা, অহিন্দ্র চৌধুরী চিত্রশালা প্রভৃতি জায়গায়, বসুমতী সাহিত্য মন্দির প্রভৃতি জায়গায় তার অঙ্কিত বহু চিত্র রক্ষিত আছে এবং ভারতবর্ষের মধ্যেও এবং ভারতের বাইরেও তার স্থাপত্যবিদ স্কাল্পচার অর্থাৎ ভাস্কর্য কার্য বহু জায়গাতেই সমাদৃত হয়েছে। কালিদাসনাথ মহাশয়ের উৎসাহে নিউজিল্যান্ড মিউজিয়ামে বাল্মীকির একটি মূর্তি চলে গেছে, তাঁর নির্মিত মূর্তি সেখানে প্রতিষ্ঠিত আছে। রানাঘাট কলেজে লেনিনের মূর্তি, বারানন্দের ব্রহ্মচারী আশ্রম দেওঘরে রাম সীতা লক্ষ্মণের মূর্তি ইত্যাদি বহু জায়গায় তাঁর ভারতের বাইরেও নিউজিল্যান্ড, চীন, বার্মা, কেনিয়া বিভিন্ন জায়গায় তাঁর চিত্রকলা এবং মূর্তি রক্ষিত আছে। চিত্রকলার আজীবন সাধক শিল্পী ভুনাথ মুখোপাধ্যায় কোন রকম যশমান, প্রতিপত্তি এবং অর্থের উপরে সম্পূর্ণরূপে নিষ্ক্রিয় ছিলেন। শিল্প সাধনাকে তিনি জীবনের প্রধান দিক বলে গ্রহণ করেছেন। তার জন্য অনেক দুঃখ কষ্ট, অনেক কিছু তিনি বরণ করেছেন, কিন্তু তিনি তার আদর্শ থেকে চ্যুত হননি। বহু মনীষীর আশীর্বাদ তিনি লাভ করেছেন এবং বহু শতাধিক মনীষীর ছবি পুত্ররূপে তার আমার কাছে রক্ষিত আছে, যেগুলো তাদের স্বাক্ষর এবং আশীর্বাদ যুক্ত। এই ছবিগুলোকে এবং পাশাপাশি তিনি শুধু সেই শিল্পকলা নয়, ভাস্কর্য নয়, তার সঙ্গে তিনি সাহিত্য চর্চা করেছেন এবং কবি করুণরঞ্জন মল্লিক এবং করুণারঞ্জন বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায়ের উৎসাহে কবিতা রচনা করেন। তার কাব্য তরঙ্গ গ্রন্থ প্রকাশিত হয়েছে। শিল্প সাধনার ক্ষেত্রে তিনি গার্ডেন কনস্ট্রাকশন, উদ্যানবিদ্যা শিক্ষা করেছিলেন রবীন্দ্রনাথের পুত্র রথীন্দ্রনাথ ঠাকুরের কাছে, এবং তার উৎসাহে তিনি বাড়িয়া এবং দশপল্লা রাজ্যে গিয়ে ইংরেজ আমলে উদ্যান শিল্প কাজও তিনি করেছেন। দুর্লভচন্দ্র ভট্টাচার্য পাখোয়াজি এবং দিলীপ রায়ের কাছে তিনি সঙ্গীত শিক্ষাও করেন। এগুলো তাঁর শিল্প সাধনার পাশাপাশি শিল্পকলার অখণ্ড যে রূপ, সেই রূপের সঙ্গে তিনি যে বিচরণ করতে পেরেছেন তার প্রমাণ। এই বিষয়ের উপরে তাঁর অনেক ক্যাসেট প্রকাশিত হয়েছে এবং সম্প্রতি কিছু বইও প্রকাশিত হয়েছে। ইনস্টিটিউট অফ হিস্টোরিক্যাল স্টাডিজের লাইব্রেরিতে আমি সেই বইগুলো প্রত্যেকটি দান করেছি। এবং সম্প্রতি তার উপরে গত 1 বছর পূর্বে একটি ওয়েবসাইট তৈরি করা হয়েছে আমারই চেষ্টায়। সেই ওয়েবসাইটের নম্বরটা আমি আপনাদের জানাচ্ছি। যদি উপস্থিত হতে সকলে হওয়া যেত তাহলে আমি লিখিতভাবেই জানাতে পারতাম। আপনাদের অনুরোধ করছি যদি আপনারা নম্বরটি নোট করে নেন তাহলে ওয়েবসাইটে আপনারা দেখতে পাবেন। আমি নম্বরটি বলছি, artist-bhunath.org। হ্যালো, আপনারা শুনতে পাচ্ছেন সকলে?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা, এই নম্বরটি যদি আপনারা আর্টিস্ট ড্যাশ Bhunath, BHUNATH, one word, Bhunath dot org। এইটি আপনাদের নোট করে
ছোট হাতের তো, সব ছোট হাতের তো, সব স্মল।
হ্যাঁ,
এভরি লেটার স্মল লেটার্স।
হ্যাঁ, স্মল লেটার।
artist-bhunath.org।
এটি আমাদের প্রত্যেককে দেখার জন্য অনুরোধ করছি। এখানে প্রায় 400 মতন তার চিত্রকলা, ভাস্কর্যে জল রং, তেল রং, প্যাস্টেল রং, বিভিন্ন ডিজাইন এবং ভাস্কর্য শিল্পের বহু নিদর্শন আমি যুক্ত করেছি। এবং বিভিন্ন মনীষীদের সঙ্গে তিনি যে ছবি আঁকার পর তাদের স্বাক্ষর গ্রহণ করছেন, জওহরলাল নেহেরু, শ্যামাপ্রসাদ মুখোপাধ্যায়, দালাই লামা, সীমান্ত গান্ধী, রাজেন্দ্র প্রসাদ, এই সমস্ত ছবি সঙ্গে যুক্ত আছে। এবং আচার্য প্রফুল্লচন্দ্র রায়, নন্দলাল বোস, সুনীতি কুমার চ্যাটার্জি প্রভৃতি বহু বিদগ্ধ ব্যক্তি তাঁকে যেসব সার্টিফিকেট দিয়েছেন সেসব সার্টিফিকেট অরিজিনাল আমার কাছে আছে, তার কপি এই ওয়েবসাইটে যুক্ত করা হয়েছে। আপনাদের প্রত্যেককে সেই ওয়েবসাইট দেখার জন্য অনুরোধ করছি। তাতে ভুনাথ মুখোপাধ্যায়কে সম্পূর্ণরূপে চিহ্নিত করা এবং তার সম্পর্কে ভবিষ্যতে গবেষণা হোক, সেই শুভ প্রার্থনা জানিয়ে আপনাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আমার বক্তব্য শেষ করছি।
Baseline.
হ্যাঁ স্যার, বলুন।
Baseline.
Time has come to wind up the sessions because we have already lost much time. And you see, I have got another appointment right at 6:30, so I have to get ready for that. And I want to take leave. And with that, I conclude that this is a very fruitful and really stimulating sessions which has set me think about many aspects of art and especially art of Ramkinker Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, respected chairman, for chairing this session in a very befitting manner. And sir is taking leave from us, the chairman sir, because he has another program at 6:30. Now, baseline. Baseline. Baseline, can you hear us? Baseline?
হ্যাঁ স্যার আপনাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ, so can you please ask the Honorable Director to say that to request me to request the P.R.O to please propose the vote of thanks. Hello, sir. Director sir. Director sir.
Hello.
Hi sir. May I propose?
It has been a wonderful session, and we are drawing to close. At this
Yes.
stage, I request our P.R.O. Abarno to offer a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of the Institute of Historical Studies, on behalf of the director and my colleagues of the Institute of Historical Studies, I thank Sri Aloy Mukherjee, the son of the late artist Bhunath Mukherjee, for having instituted this annual lecture in memory of his father. I thank Sri Aloy Mukherjee for joining us in this webinar, and we heard about his father, who was a brilliant artist. I thank him for saying a few words about his father. Next, I thank the Honorable Chairman of this session, Eminent Art Critic, Sri Manasij Majumder, for having chaired this session in a wonderful and befitting manner. Sir, your presence has lit up this webinar, and your in-depth analysis about the topic has enlightened us. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Next, I thank the Honorable Speaker of this session, our own man, Dr. Shamir Isha, Assistant Professor and former head of the Department of History, St. Xavier's College, for wonderfully explaining about the life and works of the great artist Sri Ramkinker. Sir, your talk has opened new avenues in the field and areas of research regarding this artist. Your talk has enlightened not only the common masses, but also the art critics and the students of art. Next, I thank my colleagues of the Institute of Historical Studies. We all worked as a team to make this lecture, this webinar, successful. I shall be feeling in my duty if I don't thank our Honorable Director, Professor Chittabrata Palit. Please give a big hand for Professor Chittabrata Palit. He is a very wise man, and he always helps us with his valuable advice and knowledge. At the end, last but not the least, I shall be failing in my duty if I don't thank the technical persons, Sheikh Maidul Rahman and Sheikh Safiqul Rahman. In spite of their personal bereavement, they have arranged this webinar in a befitting manner. Maidul has facilitated for the arrangement of this webinar. Thank you, Maidul. Thank you, Safiq. And then I thank Professor Abu Saleh, Dr. Abu Saleh, Assistant Professor of English, Uttarpara College, Hassan Habok, who has facilitated the arrangement of this webinar, and other technical assistants of West Bengal. They are a wonderful technical team, and they have helped us before also the first webinar organized by the Institute of Historical Studies was also done by them. And I hope that they will be with us in our future endeavors also. So we thank all of them, the technical staff, and we thank at the outset, at the end, all the participants. They are our source of inspiration. All the participants, the art critics, the students, and ladies and gentlemen who have joined this webinar. With these words, I end my vote of thanks here, and only to remind you, with the permission of Sir, Sir has already said that after Puja, we will be commemorating the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi through our webinar, and the keynote speaker will be Professor Subodh Mukherjee of Kolkata University. And with these words, just to remind, Sir has already stated, and I have already just reminded you about this webinar once again, with the permission of our director, Sir. With these words, I end my vote of thanks here, and wishing you a very happy festive season ahead. I conclude my vote of thanks here. Thank you.
Session is over.
Yes.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.